Hi everyone, this is chapter 11 on hurricanes, and it sums up a lot of what you've learned over the course of the semester. And in summing it up, let's start with what you know. So in what you know is what you remember from Katrina. And many of you really were impacted by family or by news of Katrina in 2005. And in looking at this photo, you now know that that is a cyclone, and you understand the counterclockwise rotation of that cyclone in the northern hemisphere around a low, which in this case forms an eye. So we're going to start with what you know and then add on to it. What you know is that hurricanes are cyclones with a counterclockwise spin, and you know that hurricanes have an enormous amount of rain associated with them. This is actually a great chart of an analysis of precipitation in the days of Katrina and after Katrina over 6 days. And you can see in here when you're looking at the very highest levels of precipitation, around 20 inches in the New Orleans area, but you're still getting significant 20-inch rainfalls in the Appalachian area and all the way up through the Canadian southern areas as well. So just a tremendous amount of precipitation from hurricanes. And of course, that's one of the biggest problems with hurricanes are the flooding that results as a result of it. So what many people are worried about the winds of hurricanes, you know that flooding is actually the biggest problem and one that we have to be very aware of when we are forecasting. This type of storm, this cyclonic storm that we're talking about that comes out of the tropics, the warm areas, is the same storm under a different name in many parts of the world. And I wanted to make sure that you understood that hurricanes, from what you know on the east coast of the United States, are also hurricanes on the west coast of the United States. But the same storm is called a typhoon in Asia, and it's called a cyclone in the southern hemisphere. Same structure, same formation, same storm, different names. Starting with what you know that mid-latitude cyclones, like what you see on the left, are formed out of the polar front, which is along 60 degrees north, and which can trend in the lower latitudes, 48 degrees, 50 degrees, during the winter, when that cold air has so much more force to come farther south. And you know that these mid-latitude storms still need a warm sector, and that warm sector is right in here between the warm front and the cold front. In relation to that, tropical cyclones, as we can call hurricanes, not mid-latitude cyclones, but tropical cyclones, are essentially heat engines. They work off all of the heat that is all around them, and they lack some of the wind shear and the upper level reinforcement that the mid-latitude cyclones require. So in other words, the mid-latitude cyclones require a warm sector and require upper level support. The tropical cyclones are heat engines all the way around, with warm water all the way around them, and therefore do not need upper level support. In fact, this type of storm breaks apart when upper level support is in place. We'll go over that more. In fact, you know that the reason that hurricanes are more impactful later in the summer season is because you know that water warms up and takes more time and energy to warm up, so that the specific heat of water being quite high means that it takes more energy, more time for the Caribbean basin to warm up, and our peak of storms is right around September. that September timeframe is really important for three key points in regard to hurricane formation. That warm water exists in September and October in the Caribbean basin, and the high humidity as well. And the light winds exist during that time as well. We're going to go into that a bit more. Those conditions exist in the tropics, especially around September and October, because the weather is so different from the mid-latitude areas. The sun is higher in the sky in the tropics. Seasonal temperature changes are very small, and isobars, which are the surface pressure differences, are really useless. The reason I say that they are useless is because the tropics are essentially a low pressure surface area, and they are a low pressure surface area because that air is so warm that it is just constantly convecting up. Remember, rising slow, clouds and snow, surface low. And this area is essentially a low pressure area. As a result of these conditions, we can use the same 6 steps of cyclogenesis for tropical cyclones as we used for mid-latitude cyclones. Remember, these 6 steps were developed by the Norwegian scientists who were just looking at surface data. They were not looking at the upper levels. And we can really use these same 6 steps with a bit of modifications to describe what is happening with hurricanes and these tropical cyclonic storms. In fact, the first step in cyclogenesis is a stationary front. When you're talking about mid-latitude storms, that evolves from the polar front right around the 60s. When you're talking about tropical storms, you're talking about a stationary front line that is known as the Intertropical Convergence Zone, an area where there is convergent lifting and low pressure under that convergent lifting. In fact, that convergent lifting actually arises out of high pressure zones in the mid-latitudes off of North America, what we know of as the Bermuda High, and also high pressure zones off the coast of South America as well. In between those two high pressure areas, just like you know in the polar front, there's going to be a low pressure zone and the setup for a stationary front. In addition to this, we can use the second step, which is the frontal wave. You have a frontal wave in the polar front in mid-latitude storms. You have a tropical wave in the tropics for hurricanes. That frontal wave really evolves off of the surface tropical winds, the trade winds, which are coming from the northeast and moving toward the southwest. Those very important trade winds, which are more surface than upper level, but remember, these storms don't need upper levels, are coming right in here and can push down on the wave, push down on the stationary front to produce a little trough and push up on the other side. So we're really looking at trade winds rounding off of Africa, pushing down and pushing up for a little ridge as a result of that in a tropical wave. Remember, these winds are now moving from the coast of Africa into the Caribbean Sea. These winds are moving east to west on the surface. We went over this, so you can go over this if you need it more. We went over this as well. And the third step in here, the open wave, all right, is getting a bit of these this open wave to move in on a convergent level. So it's the same sort of thing. It's working in different directions, but it's the same modality of getting ready for an occluded storm, where in this case, the cold wave will be flipped and the cold wave will be chasing after the warm wave. In the same way here, you'll see occluded fronts in hurricanes as well. Then you will see the hurricane break up when you have a cutoff low. Let's get into the formation of hurricanes more in the next video.